Since the beginning of the conflict between Israel and Hamas, the world has remained in a critical situation. There is concern about a possible escalation with Hezbollah, an armed group backed by Iran. Since the start of the conflict, Hezbollah fighters have launched multiple attacks towards Israel, mainly from Lebanese territory. Despite this, most of these attempts have been thwarted and have caused no harm in Israel. Even so, the frequency of these attacks generates general nervousness. Recently, Hassan Nasrallah, in his first press conference since the start of the conflict last week, refrained from making strong statements. However, the attacks persisted even after his speech. This has further raised tension between Israel and Hezbollah fighters. Let's see what happened. Hezbollah fighters fired missiles at Israeli cities near the Lebanese border. In response, the Israel Defense Forces initially fired warning shots, but then employed a much more forceful response. This action served as a lesson to the fighters who continued to attack. There were casualties among the Hezbollah fighters carrying out the attacks. In intense fire, Israel managed to neutralize many of the fighters simultaneously. 7 Hezbollah members lost their lives due to intense Israeli fire. On the northern border with Lebanon, Israel eliminated another 7 Hezbollah fighters, bringing the total to 78 deaths among Hezbollah fighters. These events, along with the deaths of 18 Palestinians at the hands of Israeli forces in Cisjordan, have led Iran's foreign minister, Hossein Amir Abdol-An, to claim that a broader regional escalation of the conflict is underway, with inevitable. Hezbollah, the Lebanese political and military group, along with Iran, the major proxy movement, mentioned the 7 fighters and stated that they were martyred on their way to Jerusalem. The death toll among Hezbollah members now far exceeds the casualties suffered in the 2006 war with Israel, sparking internal debates about next steps. The group's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, will deliver his second speech this month today, presenting his final reflections. In his previous speech, Nasrallah made clear that all military options were on the table and that this conflict with Israel differs significantly from previous ones. Iran's alarming prediction about the course of events will be tested with the convening of an extraordinary joint Islamic-Arab summit in Riyadh, which will take place today after a sudden change, and 2 extraordinary summits were originally planned to be held this weekend: the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Summit and the Arab League Summit. However, due to the exceptional circumstances in the Palestinian Gaza Strip, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia announced the combination of both summits, joining efforts to present a common position. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi is expected to attend, and the OIC is expected to demand specific measures to contain Israel. This event represents a serious challenge for Saudi diplomacy. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman will have to balance his actions between appearing simply repetitive in previously ignored calls for restraint toward Israel and instead initiating concrete action, such as an oil boycott. Prince Mohammed previously showed extreme resistance to supporting a boycott. Before the meeting, Raisi stated, "My assessment is that if the OIC emergency meeting in Saudi Arabia fails to relieve and rescue the Palestinian nation, the magnitude of conflicts in the region will increase. Islamic governments could find limitations in helping the people of Palestine and Gaza. Raisi is pressuring Arab governments to cut ties with Israel." In a twist, Prince Mohammed yesterday did not explicitly condemn Israel's violations of international law in Gaza, but Saudi Arabia sees the possibility of normalization conditional on Israeli concessions toward a Palestinian state as a significant card in the region. Ahead of the summit, the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, met with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo to discuss intensifying efforts to achieve a ceasefire and protect civilians in the region. David Sutterfield, the U.S. Special Envoy for Humanitarian Affairs in the Middle East, recently ruled out the possibility that Iran and its proxies plan significant involvement in the war. Sutterfield commented, "We do not believe that a conflict between Lebanon and Israel is inevitable. The current reality does not show clear intentions on either side to accelerate a conflict or war. However, this perspective is not universally shared. Last night, Yemeni rebels claimed responsibility for launching missiles towards the southern Israeli city of Eilat, 2,000 kilometers from the capital Sana'a. The Israeli army confirmed having intercepted the projectiles with its Arrow missile defense system and Patriot anti-aircraft batteries. Earlier, the Houthis shot down a U.S. MQ-9 drone off the coast of Yemen. Not only Hezbollah, but other groups also launch periodic attacks against Israel. However, Hezbollah and Hamas pose the greatest challenges. As has been evidenced, Lebanon becomes a critical point between Hezbollah and Israel. The fundamental question in Lebanon: It is simple but complex. Is the Lebanese population in favor of a total war against Israel? It is crucial to keep in mind how devastating a conflict would be, as Lebanon has experienced this before. In 2006, Hezbollah and Israel had a brutal war that lasted 33 days and displaced 1 million people in Lebanon. Much of southern Beirut was destroyed by Israeli bombing. Former Prime Minister Fouad Siyora, who is credited with leading the negotiations that ended this conflict, said, "Lebanon cannot face another war. How much more can this country take? We cannot allow it." Lebanon is currently facing multiple intersecting crises. There is a political crisis with the inability to elect a new president, revitalize institutions, and a serious economic crisis. It is clear that they cannot intervene in this conflict, but like many Lebanese, the former prime minister is deeply shocked by the Israeli occupation of Gaza and the lack of intervention by the international community. Meanwhile, the humanitarian situation in Gaza worsens. The brutality of the Israeli military operation shows no signs of abating. Yesterday, Israeli tanks surrounded a hospital in Gaza. The hospital director reported that the largest health facility in the region was bombed. The director of a hospital in northern Gaza warned that the medical center is surrounded by tanks, making any exit impossible. Mustafa al-Khalut, director of Al-Nasser Hospital and Al-Rantisi Children's Hospital, called for the evacuation of doctors and patients from the interior. This comes after reported attacks near at least 2 hospitals in northern Gaza. The Israel Defense Forces alleged that Hamas is hiding among the population and stated that they will attack Hamas where necessary. The Israel Defense Forces declared their readiness to act in any area that threatens the state of Israel. In parallel, hundreds of thousands of Gazans moved to the south of the territory last week. The White House announced that Israel agreed to resume daily 4-hour military operations in northern Gaza. This move marks a forced change in Israel's stance toward the backlash. Thank you for following us and staying informed about these developments.